Welcome to Mindflow Radio.
Mindflow Radio. We're your hosts, Jai and Lamont McPheron.
We are all in this
together. This is the Love Rebellion. Oh, my busy, busy mind, how you do spin in so many directions. Holding your mini plates, thinking. Oh, my busy, busy mind, how do we let go of the past patterns and pave our way into the new world, free. It's a love rebellion, it's a love rebellion, it's a love rebellion, it's a love rebellion. Freedom from the fear, freedom from the hate, freedom from anger, freedom to be free. It's a love rebellion, it's a love rebellion. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Let there be peace. Oh, my busy, busy mind, how I do wish to find a solution to heal our divided peoples. Oh, my busy, busy mind, it is time to be at peace and take a breath. Be centered and rooted in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. Love rebellion, it's a love rebellion, it's a love rebellion, it's a love rebellion. Freedom from the fear, freedom from the hate, freedom from anger, freedom to be free. It's a love rebellion, it's a love rebellion, it's a love rebellion. Welcome.
It's been a wild week. We have a guest here.
Yeah, we're so excited.
Yay.
Our friend Erin Swiggum. Do you want to share some words?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to sit and just talk with you, even if we're not on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
So my name is Erin Swiggum, and I'm a family nurse practitioner by trade, I guess. I live here in Viroqua, practice at Hirsch Clinic, and have been on my own sort of mindful journey for the past, well, probably forever, hopefully forever.
Yeah.
Right.
But in recognition for the past year or two, and was just invited to talk about my experiences with Jay and Monty and talk about the experiences of the world right now and love and grief and how they combine. And
So how do you, well, first I'm Jaylyn, and
Yeah, Monty.
yeah.
And Jaylyn is a yoga teacher and a mindfulness instructor. I'm a psychotherapist, Tai Chi instructor.
Yep. Yeah, and we love mindfulness. We love meditating. We love talking with our friends about it.
Well, and I think ultimately we love training, and we love seeing, feeling like we're evolving.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. And we want to share that with others, you know, because that's what we really need in our culture is to evolve, you know. And from my perspective, the more mindful we can become, essentially the more loving and compassionate we can become towards everyone, you know, which is really key, I think, you know, that we stop fighting amongst ourselves and just find common ground and create a better culture together.
Yeah.
All of us, you know, and it starts in our own minds.
Starts with yourself.
It really does.
That's so key, and what I really learned again this week, just over and over, just keep relearning that it starts with yourself. And when you take your locus of control back, that's really the only piece of control you have is your own self and your own mind and your own well-being.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that because it causes us to want to take responsibility for our lives and ourselves, and because then we have our power
and we have our joy.
Yeah,
you know, when we quit taking care of ourselves, we lose our own joy, and then without your joy, you're unable to help others.
Well, and you know, if you look at it from the perspective of in our culture, it's really common that we get all wound up because we're trying to tell other people what to think, you know, what other people should believe. And then we get frustrated because they don't listen to us, and we fight and argue, and boom, there you go, lack of joy. You know, big time.
Yep, we're all experiencing lack of joy then. Nobody's experiencing joy.
Right. But if we go within ourselves and evolve our own consciousness, be like, oh, I actually respect everyone.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah. And that was my experience this week, and I'll just share it. That, you know, Monday I just woke up with extreme anger to start, and with the social injustice and the racial disparities, and and then, you know, through social media I see that, well, Viroqua was going to have a protest, and I thought, well, I should do that. And I've never protested in my life, not anything. And so I started to sit and think, well, why do I want to protest now? I'm very pro-protest, peaceful protest, but it's not me, and it's never been me. And I wondered, what is this? And it was anger. And I was going to react out of anger. My anger throughout the day turned to sadness, thankfully, because that's what I'm more comfortable with, is sadness and release of emotion that way. And just really sat with a lot of tears and a lot of grief, and then the next day had to find peace by myself with meditation, and then got back to a place of love where I can move forward with love instead of anger. And just that realization that that's what was driving me, even if it would have been good or okay or socially okay, it's not the way I want to act on anything, is with anger.
I mean, and just imagine if we're going to create a better culture, it's going to be through love, you know. And if we create a culture through anger, it's going to be
hate.
As
much as we
which
don't like to say that word.
Well, and that's the status quo. So that culture is not going to be any different than this culture,
right?
You know,
and
just
we
like
have to do it different. We have to do it different.
It's time for humanity to take that quantum leap into a new way, into a new consciousness.
And it starts with love of self.
Yeah, there you go.
And once you learn to love yourself, then the rest can just build and grow. And then you can authentically love others.
Yeah.
And then those others can become humanity.
Yeah.
Right. And equal to you.
Yeah. And everybody becomes equal. So
I think I like using the word compassion. You know, compassion towards myself.
Yeah.
To begin with.
Self-compassion.
Then compassion towards everybody.
Yeah.
Because we're all struggling. I mean, I don't care who you are. I mean, life has been challenging, and let's just have compassion for everyone.
Yeah. And that brings together the idea of grief. You know, we have things in life that tear us down and leave us raw and vulnerable in that place of grief. And how do we take that and use it in a way of evolution and let it help us grow and like the seed breaking through the shell, you know, the grief of losing that skin, and yet you're going to make this beautiful tree, you know? Yeah.
And grief, you know, I read the book, David Kessler's book with the 5 stages of grief, and they talk about sadness, anger, denial, acceptance. I don't remember what the 5th stage is, but then he added a 6th stage of grief and later in his work. And the 6th stage is to find purpose. And it expounds on the acceptance. So when you think about the collective grief that everybody is experiencing, then we have to sit with the 5 stages and feel them all, the denial. You know, we all wish that we could go back to March, right? I still in my mind, I literally think it's March, but that's just a process of my own grief and trauma. But if we have to sit and work through all the stages and then get to a point of acceptance and then finding purpose. And that's where the beauty of grief and suffering is finding the purpose.
Yeah. Which is love, really.
Which is always love, right?
Well, I mean, purpose, though, could be if it's motivated by love.
Oh,
if it's
sure.
motivated by compassion, then we're on to something.
Right.
If our purpose is motivated by hatred,
right,
then that's a whole different scenario.
Yeah.
You know?
I've been using love as my guide, as my word, my essence, for a while. And I kept going back to Christianity, talking about thought, word, and deed. And then I've moved that into trying to filter everything with love in thought, word, and deed.
I love that.
And if I can spend my day thinking, talking, and then acting with love, then I feel joy internally. And it's the days that are otherwise that are more difficult.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, because we were talking about that last night. You know, you can present yourself as a loving person, and then in your mind having self-hate or hating others or the other. There's that other, you know, who's less than.
Right.
So I love the thought. Wait, how's it go? Thought,
word, and deed.
Thought, word, and deed.
So in your mind, and then in your words, and then in your actions. And that controls your day, really. That's what you do.
That's really
I love
cool.
Meditation.
That's really cool. You know, and if you look at Christianity, and I'm not necessarily a Christian, but man, Jesus was just a radical.
Radical love, rebellion.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
Love your enemy. It's like, what?
I know.
Right. Who does that? You know, who can possibly do that? And it's like, we can.
And we need to. Right. We need to.
Starts
we
with forgiveness.
Models.
It starts with forgiveness, you know, and we got to forgive ourselves. And that's the reality of like this hatred and if we have hatred and anger towards others for the mistakes they've made, then when we make a mistake, it's like our mind gets in the habit of being angry and hateful. And then, so we're pointing our fingers at others. But then when we make a mistake, all that hatred and anger gets pointed back at ourselves. Because we make plenty of mistakes. I make tons of mistakes, you know. And if every time I make a mistake, I'm hating on myself, then I'm really stuck.
Yeah.
So you can look at hatred as like a mind habit. Yeah. Or compassion is a mind habit. And which habit are we going to foster? Which habit are we going to cultivate?
Spend our energy in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Build.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a choice. We can, but first we have to acknowledge it. We have to recognize it. We have to say, oh, I've got this one habit. It's not actually serving me. That's the first step. That's the first step of waking up into the truth of it, the truth of...
And it's so hard because when you, that first step, when you start to step away from your old self or your false self, as your you might want to call it, your old habits, things that you now realize aren't serving you, you step away from a lot of times relationships too, and other things that no longer serve you. And it really pulls you out of your comfort zone. And it's accepting that discomfort as part of your path. And working through that and allowing it. That's part of grief. It's part of loss, and allowing that discomfort for as long as it sits, as long as it's not turning into negative cogwheels, but
ruminating in the
It seems like you're describing cognitive dissonance. Which is why we don't want to change our opinions on things.
Right.
Because there's a time of discomfort when the ego kind of gets freaked out. It's like, what? No, you know, everything.
Right. The second you start asking, who am I? When you thought you knew who you were, things start to get uncomfortable. You know, when that and it's okay to go through that time and time again. It just creates such a better life for you and everybody around you.
It's like accepting being sculpted by your experiences.
By your soul.
In your soul,
sure. We're getting in touch with your soul.
Yeah.
Essentially, you know, and being mindfully watching our own thought patterns. That's key, you know. And then it's like, oh, wait, that was like a hateful thought. You know, but if we can look at that from a detached, non-judgmental perspective, then we're able to steer it. We're able to work with it. But if we don't notice it, it just keeps going and going and going. These old thoughts just keep rolling. And that's humanity for you right there. It's like all these people caught up in their old mind patterns, just thinking, you know, not really noticing what's going on and the energy behind it. You know?
When that, you know, and the other thing, what do you do, Monty, when you have a hateful thought, or Jay, when you have those thoughts? What's your practice to not get into the pattern?
Well, for me, I think it depends whether, I mean, getting into that place of a soulful perspective, you know, and if I feel somebody really disses me, you know, it's like, okay, now it's time to practice forgiveness. You know, I go right into that and I'll consciously in my mind say, I forgive this person for this. It's like the first step in forgiveness, even though if I don't feel it maybe in my heart, but it's moving in that direction. And then I'll see whoever dissed me or as a soulful being, just like me, just like everybody. You know, and once I get to that perspective, I realize I'm no better than anybody else. Nobody's better than me. We're all these amazing, like God creatures walking around the earth, even if we're not aware of it, you know, and we're confused. We've been raised in a really complex and perplexing culture, essentially, and we're just trying to find some clarity. So, but yeah, just forgiveness plays a big role for me, and, you know, a soulful perspective. And then I'm able to get out of, hopefully, you know, and it's not easy either. The other day I had somebody really diss me, on Facebook. It was a real bad diss, and so that night I'm like, okay, now's the time. And I forgave this person probably 25 times in my mind. And I got to the point of feeling this is okay. This is like a lesson. This is a test, and so it's anyway, that's kind of the way I deal with things.
And he's legit.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. For me, it's much more of a struggle, but I've witnessed him, and he just maintains this beautiful, compassionate composure.
With immediacy, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, he's well practiced.
Well,
He's been doing this for a long time.
But I do struggle with it too.
Yeah.
I want to say
we all have our times.
Yeah. Right. It's not like I'm there, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, I think for me as more of a novice, I can sit with those thoughts for longer than is comfortable, like up to a day, maybe even 2 days. And then I just realize that I have to take the time to meditate. And that's, unfortunately, I haven't built in a practice of meditation into my life, just with all the excuses in the world that all of us will use, kids and little kids and babies and work schedules. But if I feel myself, what I call going into trance, which I learned from Tara Brach, where I'm below the line, I'm below where I want to be.
Yeah.
Then I schedule time to meditate, and I take time for myself, and then my meditation is not perfect. It's finding whatever it is that can get my mind to clear, and for me to be able to sit there and work through all of the thoughts in a process. And in the end, I always come back to my essence, which is love, which that's been my most recent practice with it.
Wow. And that's interesting, looking at it from the perspective of moving from a trance state into a transcendental state.
Yeah.
That's really the key, Think of these trance states as like, that's mob mentality right there.
Yeah. Living below the line. And what, and that just is, for anybody who doesn't understand what that means or hasn't really heard that, it's if you identify who you want to be, which again, I go back to always have been wanting to be love, thought, word, and deed. If that's not where I am, I'm in trance. I'm below the line. And it could be any emotion that I don't want to live with for a long period of time. And that's when the meditation or mindfulness practice can pull you out of trance or above trance, back to where you want to be.
Back into the vital, the vital being that you are.
Right. And there's so many terms I've learned for it, whether it's the flow, the gap, or God's grace. There are many terms of where we want to be on a regular basis. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of work.
It sure does.
It's worth
yoga,
it, though.
Totally.
In yoga, they call it tapas. It's the discipline, and it's one of the founding principles of yoga is you must do your tapas, and that's what comes up for me.
Yeah. So like your devotionals, your practice,
your training,
your disciplines, and
acknowledging. We found this video, TEDx, about the 5 hindrances of meditation. What's the word? Progress. The things that hold us back from progressing. And in the end, I won't go through all that, but what he said is the antidote is RAIN. Recognize, accept,
investigate.
Thank you.
And nurture. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for saving me there.
I knew you were here for a reason.
That was awesome. Yeah. And so if we can really accept that as a process of, I'm feeling hateful. It's that recognition of my action that I'm taking towards this other is not fair. It's not fair to the other. It's not fair to my soul.
Well, even if it's an action in your mind.
Right. The thought deed.
Thought, word,
deed. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I mean, but that first step, that recognition, that's being mindful.
Yeah.
And that's something you can take with you throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you have this certain, I mean, it's great to like sit and be, work on it, but just developing that perspective that you bring with you all the time where you're watching your thoughts.
Yeah.
From a scientific perspective, and then you begin to notice if you're ruminating, on something negative or, but step one is recognizing. which is another way to frame the word mindful.
And sometimes you can immediately let it go on recognition. And you don't have to work through all the steps. But if you start to ruminate, that's where I find that RAIN practice really good, because then if you're ruminating on something, then you have to acknowledge it. And then when you investigate it, that's where the beautiful part happens, where it turns into your own healing.
Yeah.
So when on investigation is when you figure out, why does this bother me so much? And what I've experienced with it is it usually brings up trauma. And then and sometimes it's trauma I didn't even know was I was still holding. And then I'm able to investigate it and then nurture it is just then loving it. So I found it to be such a good practice for my own healing, is recognizing those thoughts.
Yeah.
And then if I can't get them to stop, that's when I have to sit and be. And that's when I use the meditation.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's beautiful too. The nurture and the investigate part. Investigating kind of says, okay, what is my part in it? What is their part in it? Is it really their part, or is it what I'm projecting on
Why
them?
am I having these thoughts?
Yeah.
Essentially. And
I also wanted to bring up the epigenetic trauma that's beyond what we can even remember. It's like this ancestral passed down.
Generational trauma.
Yeah.
Just think how much trauma humanity has been through. It's like,
it's really amazing.
it is amazing.
It's just a constant trauma cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's time to maybe try and work our way out of that.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting time to attempt that, because we are experiencing a big collective trauma on a global scale, actually. Like larger than any other trauma that I can think of in human history, having it be so interconnected by the internet, having all these countries say, okay, we're going to do the stay-at-home order, and it's like, whoa, everyone is experiencing this. Not everyone's going to be traumatized by it, but there is going to be a pretty good percentage of people who...
Everybody will know somebody intimately that's traumatized by it, I do believe, for the most part, other than maybe some little isolated spots.
Yeah. Which is, to recover from trauma is to accept the grief and to go through the grief process,
Yep. And to allow others. So let's say that you aren't traumatized right now and you aren't feeling that your own soul has experienced trauma from this, but somebody else has, and you being open to their grief also allows everybody to heal. Because part of grief is you can't do it alone.
Right.
You can't heal your own grief and move through grief alone. You have to explore that with somebody else and share that. And it's something to share with somebody intimately, really. And sometimes that becomes many people. That's why a lot of people who are grieving, I've learned, they have a period of time where they have to keep sharing their story.
Yeah.
And that's right. And that's part of psychology too, where talk therapy, where you have to just start with talking and sharing your story. And so we're all going to need to talk about this for a long time with each other and our experiences, and be open to listening to each other for sometimes what might feel like longer to those who are more traumatized.
Yeah, and helping those to talk, because one of the big signs of trauma is to not be able to talk because you feel alone in it. You have that isolation, and we have all this isolation happening, so it's very compounded in that harm that's being had, especially in this country, I know, and how it's turning out in the ways that it is. But the isolation piece and reaching out.
Yeah.
It's so vital to the healing process.
Yeah. And reaching out, just not sitting with it, like you said, by yourself, because there's always somebody who's ready to talk and listen, you know, and finding your community. When the pandemic first started, that was my first thought is, okay, everybody find their community. And that doesn't have to be 1,000 people. That doesn't have to be 100 people. That can be 5 people that you can share with, and you're open to share with each other, and you meet each other in a similar place.
Yeah. It's that family piece.
It is.
Adopted family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very important.
Well, I think it's important too. You talked about the epigenetics of trauma, and just like humanity, we've been through so much trauma over the last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been times when there's been more trauma than now, even like World War I or World War II, for example. I mean, just like massive amounts of trauma. And it's something it's passed down from generation to generation.
Well, I mean, even further back, you have to help me out with this. The Christian wars in Europe. What was that called? I don't remember.
Crusades?
Yeah,
Crusades,
that was bad.
That was really bad.
I mean, but there was plagues, and there was just like living in, I mean, 10,000 years ago, we're in a cave, fighting off the saber-toothed tigers or whatever. I mean, there's been trauma.
Right. Imagine
all
that.
through. Yeah, right. Right. And just imagine everything else that happened. I mean, it was, so it's like really built into our psyche.
Right. And then previous generations, when we get to the generational trauma, if you hold it in, and if you don't release that in grief and processing, and then you pass that down generation after generation of not exploring it, that's when the generational trauma happens. So this is our generation's opportunity to not hold this in.
Right. It's our turn to like shift it, shift gears. Like we don't need to just accept all the old like mind patterns.
Right. The lack of emotional intelligence, and how many generations has that been passed down through, where you don't feel, you don't show, you don't experience emotions or even recognize them.
Yeah, or just the fear of the other.
Yeah.
That's been passed down. I mean, and that was valid back in the day.
Right.
We had to fight over our water hole.
Sure.
Or we would perish,
Sure.
But that's not true anymore. Now we have enough resources, enough technology where all of us can have clean water. All of us can have good food. All of us can have decent shelter. All of it. I mean, if we just learn to like let go of the trauma patterns from the past, where we're like hateful and
judgment.
Yeah.
The non-judgment piece.
Yeah.
Is huge. And early in my practice, I started to try to spend my whole day not judging, experiencing things without judgment.
Okay.
And it's amazing how many things you judge when that's what you've been trained to do.
Yeah.
Sure.
And we passed it down, like you said, generation to generation, because you needed to protect your resources.
Yeah.
And so then you fear the other. And how do you fear the other? You place judgment on them. You almost have to other them as bad.
Well, you dehumanize them.
Right. And you aren't going to fight with them if you don't other them as bad and judge them.
Yeah.
You have to place that on them, and we don't have to do
that.
Call them,
you create this like construct where they're subhumans. The Nazis had a word for that, actually. I don't know what it was, but the subhumans, and that's like the other. And then we just let's just let go of that,
like a caste system.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And then we can like kill them, and it's okay
because they're less than us.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But now let's shift gears. Let's take that quantum leap into a new type of culture, a new type of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel it happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I think so.
I think so.
I think new people are coming into the paradigm, if we were to call it.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people are going to get stuck on the words and the vocabulary.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not about the words or the vocabulary. No. I mean, I use love because that works for me. That works for my feminine soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it could be non-judgment.
Mm-hmm.
You could start with just
respect,
non-judgment, community,
compassion.
There are so many words you can use to start with your own, what I call essence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then move towards a better society.
Yeah, because it's an energy. It's not a word.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If I can go out into the world, into Quick Trip, and see the God nature in everybody, my energy is different, and people feel it.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, so we need to transcend the words in a way, but they help point to the direction, but they're not the end of the path. You know, that's.
So where I get stuck sometimes right now is, how do you, and I know the answer. The answer is always to look in. Yeah. But how do you take action? How do you be an actionable person in the process for others who are oppressed?
Yeah.
Without moving into a judgment state.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that brings up for me what I want to tie in, and that's when we work on ourselves. It is my belief that we heal our ancestors and we heal our children and the future generations. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty big work.
So that is an action in itself, just working on yourself.
Right.
Because then you're creating this inviting, welcoming, accepting vibe so that people who have been oppressed feel safe with you, are comfortable with you. Maybe they'll share, maybe they won't. And I think that it's our responsibility to not expect anything from them, but just to hold a vibe of acceptance and love and heal ourselves so we can heal our past and any ancestors in the past who may have had something to do with the oppression, and working through our children so that they can bring forward that positive vibe of we accept all humans.
And that's true. I mean, that's naturally what I've done. I mean, there's been many times I didn't know what I was doing, but I was so overwhelmed with society that I had to tell myself that all I can control is myself and my children. I can't control my children, but I can inspire them and I can break the cycles by modeling.
Setting examples. Yeah, that's true.
And I've done that many times over the years where I just cut back everything. I'm doing it right now. I cut off of social media and I because my soul was hurting instead of loving. So I had to recognize where the triggers were, and then I just focus on my community, my chosen people, and my children.
Nice self-care piece there.
Yeah.
Way to go. It's not easy.
No.
I mean, we need to realize that, like, Facebook and all that stuff it can be an addiction.
Yeah.
You know,
and then I transcend into another addiction. I just read books. But I think that's better. Because these are, I mean, for one thing, if you're reading a book, it's been there for a little while. And it's been in production for a little while. There's nothing that's in your face that needs to be interpreted by you with any sort of judgment, because it's already existed. Somebody's already read it. Where social media is in your face in the now. You know, it could be happening live right now in front of you. And
maybe that's part of the addiction of it, is because it is present and we want to be present.
And we want to, that could be. We want to be present. I mean, and I love podcasts for that too, though. If I need to be present, I can do it through a podcast more easily, because it could have happened today. It could have been recorded today. This could be brand new, where a book takes me to a place that isn't exactly right now.
Yeah.
It's already been filtered.
Right.
You know?
Edited. Lots of editing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ever since Monty's book, I'm like, oh my gosh, so much editing happens. This is nuts. I don't think I want to write one now.
So the way I'm seeing it is just the whole, it starts with working on ourselves, with working on our own minds, our own consciousness, our own perspective. Then the next step is perhaps community, building community. And the next step after that, through community, we have power to change things.
We have energy.
We have vision. Yeah. Yeah. And just collective energy. And then we go out and we change the culture and make the world a better place. I mean, so it seems selfish to be working on yourself, but it's not at all. I mean, and energy is real. Yeah. If I'm spewing a bunch of hatred out into the world, that's a real thing. It's a real act.
Disservice. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the status quo. I would argue, and what we're trying to do is break free of the status quo, break free of the PC status quo, and just be transcendental rather than being in that mindless trance. And bam. Yeah. Then the world's changing for a better place. And we're right on the cusp of that. I'm excited by that,
Yeah.
The technology's there. We can do it. And I just sense it. I sense there's too much love in the air for us to be like completely fighting each other. Yeah, right. I just don't sense it. I saw this Facebook Live bit about a gathering in Madison a few nights ago, and it was a peaceful gathering, and there just was love in the air. I could see it. I was like, oh, there's too much love here. This is going to be okay. This is going to, I mean, there were some rough patches for sure, but I feel like it's just time.
Going to shift.
And it is shifting.
And I want to share that energy moves beyond time and space. So when we watch a live video, we're there. We're energetically already tied to it because we're being present with it. Even if it's a recording of a live video or a recording of any sort that's from the past, we're making it present by being with it. Kind of like what you're saying with reading. Yeah. You're taking these past works and making it present in the now.
Right.
And that kind of energy is real.
Right. And then you carry it forward. Like you said, it's not just now. Then you carry that energy forward. And that goes back to being really mindful of what you choose to read, and what you choose to watch. And and I, guilty, all my books are about helping myself be self-aware about love, compassion, and things that are beautiful, because that's where I want to spend my energy and that's where I want to give my energy. If I'm going to give energy to others, I want it to be that energy, not energy of hate.
So why would you be guilty? Was that just a word?
Interesting.
Funny word choice.
Well, I sometimes think, like media, if you were to look at my Facebook or my news media that comes to me,
your feed,
it's already filtered for me.
Yeah.
And so that takes me to cut the other perspective off.
Okay.
A lot, which we know that there's dark and light, right? So I choose to really never focus on the dark, except for my own dark. If it's my personal darkness,
you gotta transmute it.
Then I have to work through it.
Yeah.
But if it's a loved one's darkness or somebody else that I can help with, I will spend my energy there. But I'm not going to spend my energy on society's darkness or religion's darkness or capitalism, which I feel like is darkness. I'm not going to spend my energy learning about that and growing with that.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes that will shut me off from the other perspective.
Okay.
That's interesting. Buddha in the Lotus Sutra, he says, if you want to make change, focus on the positive. And that each of us will be enlightened eventually. So just chill out, basically. And we'll get there,
And so I have to tie that in. the idea of guilt, and not to like point fingers or anything, but to notice in ourselves that that's like a self-judgment that's saying, oh, I'm not worth that. I'm not worth all that love and attention and all that self-care. But really in all of our professions, we're supposed to do self-care. We are supposed to make sure that we are centered and grounded as we work with our people, and so it's very important to acknowledge that that's
right. Mindfulness has given us that tool too. I think it's given people now a new tool to use, whether it's in the workplace, in the school, everywhere. It's a tool to change into a more positive practice and to go away from guilt. And when I think about guilt too, what my practice with guilt is I find that there's a little bit of good in guilt. If it's making you stop and recognize that something isn't right, that could serve you into getting you on a new direction. And getting you back on the path. And it's shame that really becomes very harmful to us and our souls, because then we become that. Guilt is like a warning sign, and then shame is where you sit with it. You become that action. You become that person that you don't want to be. And then you justify those actions to keep perpetuating.
That justifying is really important.
Well, and perhaps guilt, when we ruminate on guilt, maybe that's where shame comes from.
Right.
Like you say, guilt is an important emotion to like look at, but we don't want to ruminate on it.
We want
to learn from it.
Yes.
Yeah. And then when I make a mistake, if I can be like, okay, I made this mistake, I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to try and not make this mistake again. Then the mistake has purpose.
Right.
And I can let go of the guilt.
Growth.
And move from guilt to forgiveness.
Forgiving yourself.
Yes, forgiving yourself. And then maybe you need to forgive someone else.
Yes.
But forgiveness and maybe an apology, which is another big thing, is apology.
Okay.
But not going into shame. So you go to those steps.
Tricky spot.
Go to forgiveness instead of shame.
Yeah, so I want to share the loving kindness meditation and just talk about that a little bit. And then we'll talk about our experience with that. So we're going to do like a mini standing meditation. We're all standing here together in the studio. And if you're out there wanting to process the things that we've shared, if you can take a moment to stand up and breathe in from the top of your head and let the energy from the top of your head move down the spine. Notice any blocks, allow them to open down to the root, the tailbone. Exhale down the legs, root through the feet. Imagine you're standing on soft earth, rooting down. Inhale from the top of the head, through the spine, into the tailbone, sits bones. Exhale, down the legs, rooting through the feet. And in your mind's eye, bringing yourself fully into view. And with your inner voice, may I be happy. Really picture yourself happy. May I be peaceful. Be filled with peace. May I be filled with loving kindness. And really picture yourself nurtured by loving kindness, nurtured by peacefulness, nurtured by joy. And then in your mind's eye, picturing someone you love that you wish to send loving kindness to, and picturing them filled with grace. In your mind's voice, May you be happy. Picture them receiving this blessing. May you be filled with peace. May you be filled with loving kindness. Really picturing them receiving this wish, this prayer. Seeing them in the light of receiving. And then bringing someone to mind who may have rubbed you the wrong way in some way or other, that you may have judged in a way that you felt justified in at one point, and picturing them for a moment and sending them this prayer. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be filled with loving kindness. And picturing them with compassion, receiving your prayer. Picturing their energy shifting. Picture the truth of energy. And taking a few more breaths, grounding in from the top of the head into the sits bones. Exhale down the legs, rooting down. And know that you can use this practice at any time, any place, any moment that you notice yourself going into the other judgment. First starting with the self, moving to someone you love, and then going into the judgment. One more deep breath. And I invite my friends here to share any past or present moment experience they've had with this kind of meditation.
The not specifically this, but the first piece that you started with were imagine yourself being as happy as you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
At night, I have a practice that I think I stole from Wayne Dyer. I'm not exactly sure who, but I think it was in one of his books where when you go to sleep at night, you spend your last 5 minutes or last few waking minutes imagining the absolute best, most beautiful day that you could have the next day. And that isn't imagining that everything goes perfect, but it's more about imagining how it feels emotionally, maybe even how the air feels that day, how your chest feels, how your body feels.
Yeah.
And then, what Wayne said is that then you'll spend at least, I believe it was like 4 or 5 hours of sleeping time meditating on that feeling.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
And so I try to do that at night when I go to bed.
Do you notice a difference in your days?
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm going to try that.
Where if you spend the day ruminating over all of your negative thoughts, which I think there is a process where there's a meditation where you have to go through that, which I don't always practice. But if that's what you do before you go to bed, you'll stay there for those first hours of sleep. And then like Monty and I were talking earlier, then when that sleep cycle breaks between like 1 and 3 in the morning, and you come back to consciousness a little bit, you'll probably grab one of those thoughts again. And then you might be stuck on them.
I know Abraham Hicks talks about that too, to go to sleep with that thought and wake up and believe that that energy is real and that you really can manifest that day of peace and joy, and to bookend your your sleep time with that practice.
Yeah.
Well, another way of looking at that too, it's like energy is real, and going to sleep with the vision of the right energy for the next day, and it's profound. I mean, we're creative beings. That's what we do as humans. We manifest things. We create things. You know, that's what differentiates us from the animals. And let's create a better life for ourselves and a better world for everybody.
Right.
Let's focus on that. Let's get real and understand that energy is real. I mean, check out modern physics. It's energy is everything.
Yeah.
You know, let's work with that reality now and stop pretending otherwise.
I'm reading a book, Deepak, right now, Chopra. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Chopra. Thank you. And it's mostly about the soul and afterlife. And I've been exploring all of the afterlives because of my recent loss of my husband. But I've learned more about my soul by reading the book than I have anything about afterlife. And really, one of the basic theories that he comes up with for the afterlife, just from looking at near-death experiences and a lot of different tales and lores from over the years, is you create your own afterlife. Your soul, your essence, if you nurture your soul and you're creating this soul of love, then you're creating an afterlife of that. So if your vision of your afterlife is that you're going to be reincarnated into something, then that's going to become your reality. And this is all theory, of course. Right. It's manifesting
really cool.
your destiny, but it's manifesting your soul's destiny.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you continue to do the soul work while you're alive, what if that bridges you to an afterlife that is whatever you imagined it to be in its purest beauty? And on the flip side of that, what if you're imagining that your soul, because of your sins, is going to go to hell? Then what if that's what you continue to manifest? And what if it's as simple as mindfulness and switching that?
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to bring it all in and thank our listeners for contemplating life, death, grief, love, all of these really important self-care pieces of
just
being
understand
alive here on this earth.
That's true. And understand the power of our minds. And let's harness this power in a productive way.
Yeah.
And let's make this world a better place.
Yeah. Thank you for
love.
having me.
Yeah.
Thanks for being
pleasure.
here. Yeah, it was great. Well, we'll have you on again.
Yeah.
For sure.
Got
if you want
millions
to.
of things to talk about. We could spend a whole session on one thing.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm.
And thank you to our listeners. I hope you have a beautiful week and month and life.
Love one another.
Love one another.
Yeah, and thank you, Jalen. Love yourselves.
Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah. I'll try and do the same.
Me too.
All right. Peace. Thank you for your presence. You've been listening to Mindflow Radio. You can support Mindflow Radio on Patreon and get exclusive content access. Big gratitude to Lotus Head for their mindful music, keeping us in the flow. A shout out to our sponsors, Integrated Mindfulness Institute. Online, visit www.imi.earth. For ideas, questions, or comments, contact us by email, connect@imi.earth. Many blessings on our health and peaceful evolution. We are all in this together.